Welcome to True Crime Threads, where we unravel the darkest deceptions. Tonight, we delve into a story where love became the ultimate lie. Insha thought he loved her. Sarah Mitchell's life in the bustling city was a carefully orchestrated symphony of deadlines, coffee, and the occasional late-night work session. Her marketing career was thriving, her apartment was a testament to minimalist chic, and her social calendar was full. Yet a quiet corner of her heart yearned for something more. She wasn't actively searching for love, but she was open to its possibility, a subtle hum beneath the surface of her busy existence. Her days were a blur of client meetings, creative brainstorming sessions, and the constant hum of her laptop. But in the quiet moments, a sense of anticipation lingered, a feeling that something significant was just around the corner. It was a Tuesday, a day typically devoid of surprises, when David Chen entered her world. Their meeting was serendipitous, a chance encounter at her favorite independent coffee shop, a cozy spot with the aroma of roasted beans and the gentle murmur of conversation. He was there, seemingly engrossed in a business journal, his presence radiating an effortless charm that was both disarming and intriguing. A shared glance, a small, polite smile, and then a spilled latte courtesy of a clumsy barista became the unlikely catalyst for their introduction. David, quick to offer his assistance and a genuine apology for the barista's mishap, possessed an easy confidence that immediately put Sarah at ease. His eyes, a warm shade of brown, held a depth that hinted at untold stories, and his laughter, when it came, was a rich, resonant sound that filled the small space. He moved with a grace that suggested a life of purpose and success, and his tailored suit spoke of a man who paid attention to detail. Their initial conversation flowed effortlessly, moving from apologies and coffee preferences to shared interests in art and travel. Sarah found herself captivated by his articulate insights and the way his gaze lingered, making her feel like the only person in the room. He spoke of his work in international finance with a passion that was infectious, painting a picture of a dynamic, successful life. There was an undeniable magnetism about him, a sophisticated aura that set him apart. He listened intently when she spoke, offering thoughtful responses that showed genuine engagement. Before she knew it, an hour had passed, and they were exchanging numbers, a promise of future conversations hanging in the air. Sarah left the coffee shop that day with a lightness in her step, a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time. What followed was a whirlwind romance that swept Sarah off her feet. David was everything she had ever envisioned in a partner, and more. He was attentive, remembering the smallest details about her life and preferences, from her favorite flower to her preferred brand of tea. He was generous, showering her with thoughtful gifts and planning elaborate, romantic dates that felt plucked from the pages of a novel. Moonlit walks, surprise weekend getaways, and intimate dinners at exclusive restaurants. He was intelligent, engaging her in stimulating conversations about everything from global economics to abstract philosophy, always challenging her to think deeper. He was kind, always offering a comforting hand or a reassuring word when she faced challenges at work, celebrating her successes as if they were his own. He was, in every conceivable way, perfect, a dream come true. Their days were filled with laughter and shared dreams, their nights with intimate conversations and a growing sense of connection. David spoke of a future together, a life filled with adventure, success, and unwavering devotion. He painted vivid pictures of exotic vacations, a beautiful home overlooking the city, and a family built on mutual respect and boundless love. Sarah, once a cautious observer of relationships, found herself completely immersed in the intoxicating reality of their bond. She believed, with every fiber of her being, that she had found her soulmate, the missing piece of her life's puzzle. The future seemed bright, filled with endless possibilities, all centered around this incredible man. Yet, amidst the intoxicating glow of their burgeoning love, subtle dissonances began to emerge, almost imperceptible at first. There were moments when David's phone would ring, and he would excuse himself, his voice hushed, his back turned, retreating to another room, or stepping out onto the balcony. He would sometimes offer vague explanations for his sudden disappearances, attributing them to urgent business matters or unexpected family emergencies. that required his immediate attention. His stories, while plausible on their own, occasionally contained small, almost imperceptible inconsistencies when viewed collectively, like puzzle pieces that didn't quite fit. Sarah, blinded by the intensity of her feelings, dismissed these fleeting moments of unease as minor quirks, the understandable complexities of a busy man's life. She attributed them to her own overthinking, a lingering habit from past relationships that had ended in disappointment. After all, David was perfect, wasn't he? He loved her, and she loved him. What could possibly be wrong? The questions, though faint, were there, just beneath the surface of her blissful ignorance. Moving into David's luxurious penthouse apartment felt like stepping into a dream. The panoramic city views, the sleek, modern design, and the undeniable sense of security that came with being nestled high above the urban sprawl all contributed to Sarah's growing conviction that her life had finally found its perfect rhythm. David was an impeccable host, anticipating her every need, making her feel cherished and utterly at home. Their days settled into a comfortable routine, punctuated by romantic dinners, shared laughter, and the quiet intimacy of evenings spent together. The initial euphoria of their cohabitation was a potent elixir, blinding Sarah to the subtle shifts that were beginning to occur. Yet, as the initial glow began to mellow, the subtle dissonances Sarah had previously dismissed started to sharpen into clearer, more insistent notes, like a discordant chord in a once harmonious melody. The first noticeable shift was the increasing frequency of David's hush phone calls. They often occurred late at night or early in the morning, sometimes even in the middle of their shared meals. His voice a low murmur, his body language guarded and turned away from her. He would step out onto the expansive balcony, the glass doors muffling his words, or retreat to his private study, the heavy oak door firmly closed behind him. When Sarah, with a hint of curiosity, inquired about the nature of these calls, he would offer vague explanations about demanding clients in different time zones, sensitive international business negotiations, or urgent matters that required absolute discretion. His explanations were always plausible, delivered with a charming smile and a reassuring squeeze of her hand. But the sheer volume and secretive nature of these calls began to gnaw at her, planting a seed of doubt. A faint unease, like a whisper in the back of her mind, started to suggest that these calls were not merely about business, but something far more personal and clandestine. Then there were the inconsistencies in his stories. David had a remarkable ability to weave compelling narratives about his past, his family, and his meteoric rise in the world of finance. He spoke of a privileged upbringing in Europe, a prestigious education at an Ivy League university, and a vast network of influential contacts across the globe. However, when Sarah, in her genuine interest and desire to know him better, would ask follow-up questions or try to connect details from different anecdotes, she would occasionally encounter small, almost imperceptible discrepancies. A detail about his childhood home might subtly shift from one conversation to the next, or the timeline of a significant business deal would subtly alter, making it difficult to reconcile. These were not glaring falsehoods, but rather tiny cracks in the polished facade, just enough to make her pause and wonder. She would quickly rationalize them away, attributing them to the natural fallibility of memory or the complexities of a life lived at such a high pace. But the questions, once planted, began to take root, slowly eroding her unquestioning trust. Sarah's best friend, Emma Walsh, a woman with a keen eye for detail and an unwavering loyalty, was the first to voice outright suspicion. During the regular coffee dates, Sarah would recount the latest romantic gestures from David, the grand plans he had for their future, and the seemingly perfect life they were building. Emma, however, listened with a growing sense of apprehension, her brow furrowed with concern. She noticed Sarah's subtle defensiveness when David's secretive calls were mentioned, or the way Sarah would gloss over the occasional inconsistencies in his background. Emma's questions were gentle at first, then more direct, probing at the edges of David's carefully constructed persona. She pointed out the lack of concrete details about his family, the curious absence of long-term friends, and the almost too perfect nature of his charm, which seemed to lack genuine spontaneity. Sarah, still deeply enamored, initially dismissed Emma's concerns as jealousy or an overprotective instinct, convinced that Emma simply didn't understand the depth of their connection. But Emma's persistent, quiet observations began to resonate, adding another layer to Sarah's growing unease, making it harder to ignore the nagging doubts. The most unsettling red flag, however, was David's almost obsessive need for control over their shared digital space. He insisted on managing all their joint bank accounts and investments, citing his superior expertise in finance and promising exponential returns. He subtly discouraged Sarah from posting too much about their relationship on social media, claiming a desire for privacy and protection from the public eye, suggesting it was for their mutual benefit. He even suggested, with a disarmingly charming smile, that he manage her personal investments, promising exponential returns that seemed too good to be true. While his arguments were always logical and seemingly for her benefit, Sarah found herself increasingly isolated, her financial independence slowly eroding, and her digital footprint meticulously curated by David. The paradise she had found was beginning to feel less like a haven and more like a gilded cage, its bars almost invisible, yet undeniably present, slowly closing in around her. The subtle whispers of unease that had begun to haunt Sarah's perfect paradise soon escalated into a cacophony of alarming discoveries, shattering the illusion of her idyllic life. The first significant crack in David's meticulously constructed facade appeared not through a dramatic confrontation, but through a mundane, almost accidental oversight that would forever alter her perception of him. One afternoon, while David was out on one of his increasingly frequent and vaguely explained business trips, Sarah, needing a document for her own work, ventured into his study. She stumbled upon a hidden compartment in his antique mahogany desk, a place he had never mentioned, a secret space that felt inherently wrong. Inside, nestled amongst what appeared to be legitimate business papers, she found a collection of driver's licenses, passports, and credit cards, all bearing David's strikingly familiar face, but each with a different name. The names were unfamiliar, the addresses varied wildly, and the dates of birth shifted by a few years, creating a dizzying array of identities. The realization hit her with the force of a physical blow, a cold, hard truth that stole her breath. David Chen was not who he claimed to be. He was a man of many identities, a chameleon blending seamlessly into different lives, a master of disguise. The initial shock quickly gave way to a chilling determination, fueled by a potent mix of fear and betrayal. Sarah, her heart pounding with a frantic rhythm against her ribs, began to meticulously investigate, her mind racing to connect the disparate pieces of information. The financial irregularities, once dismissed as David's complex and high-stakes business dealings, now took on a sinister hue, revealing a pattern of calculated theft. She accessed their joint bank accounts, the ones David had so confidently managed and controlled, and discovered a systematic draining of her personal savings. Large sums of money had been transferred to offshore accounts, to shell corporations with obscure names, and to individuals she didn't recognize, their identities as elusive as David's true self. Her once healthy investment portfolio, the fruit of years of diligent work, had been completely liquidated, its assets vanishing into the digital ether, leaving her financially vulnerable. The financial security she had worked so hard to build was crumbling before her eyes, meticulously dismantled by the man she had trusted implicitly, the man who had promised her a future. As Sarah delved deeper into the digital rabbit hole, the web of lies grew increasingly intricate and terrifying, each thread leading to a darker revelation. She remembered David's vague explanations for his frequent absences, his hushed phone calls, and the almost imperceptible inconsistencies in his stories that she had so readily dismissed. Now, armed with the undeniable knowledge of his multiple identities, she began to cross-reference dates and locations, meticulously piecing together a timeline of deception. A chilling pattern emerged, a horrifying correlation between his business trips and news reports of financial scams, mysterious disappearances, and even unsolved murders in distant cities. The names on his fake IDs seemed to correspond to victims of these very crimes, individuals whose identities had been stolen, their lives erased, their future stolen. The man she loved, the man who had promised her a future, was not just a con artist. He was a predator, leaving a trail of destruction and despair in his wake, a ghost in the lives of others. Her desperate investigation led her to a name that sent a shiver down her spine, a name that resonated with a forgotten memory: Michael Torres. David had occasionally mentioned him as a former business partner, a man who had supposedly betrayed him, a convenient scapegoat for any past failures. But as Sarah dug deeper, she found a profoundly different story, a narrative of success and sudden, unexplained disappearance. Michael Torres had been a successful entrepreneur, known for his innovative tech startups and his philanthropic endeavors. He had vanished without a trace 2 years prior. His disappearance officially ruled a voluntary departure by authorities, though his family had always maintained foul play, their pleas for justice unheard. Sarah discovered that David, under one of his many aliases, had been the last person to see Michael before his disappearance, a chilling coincidence that could not be ignored. The connection was undeniable, a cold, hard knot of dread forming in her stomach, tightening with each new piece of evidence. The most horrifying revelation came when Sarah uncovered a series of obscure online forums and true crime blogs dedicated to unsolved missing persons cases. Among the countless desperate pleas and speculative theories, she found multiple accounts of women who had fallen victim to a charming, manipulative man with a strikingly similar modus operandi to David. Their stories mirrored her own with unsettling precision: a whirlwind romance, a gradual isolation from friends and family, and then a sudden, inexplicable disappearance, leaving behind a void of unanswered questions. The descriptions of the perpetrator, though varying in detail, all pointed to the same unsettling conclusion: David Chen, or whatever his real name was, had done this before, many times over. Sarah was not his first victim, and the chilling realization was that she might not be his last. The perfect beginning had dissolved into a terrifying nightmare, and Sarah was trapped in a web of lies, with a predator she had unknowingly invited into her life, a predator who sought her not as a lover, but as a mart, a means to an end. The chilling revelations of David's true nature had shattered Sarah's world, replacing the rosy hues of love with the stark, terrifying colors of deception and danger. The penthouse, once a symbol of their shared future, now felt like a gilded cage, its luxurious confines transformed into a suffocating prison. Every glance from David, every casual touch, every seemingly innocent question, was now imbued with a sinister undertone, a veiled threat. The man she had loved, the man she had allowed into the deepest corners of her heart, was a stranger, a chameleon who had expertly mimicked affection, while systematically dismantling her life, piece by agonizing piece. Her immediate instinct was to escape, to flee the nightmare she had unknowingly walked into, to sever all ties with the monster she had once adored. Sarah began to meticulously plan her departure, her mind a whirlwind of fear and desperate calculation. She secretly contacted Emma, her best friend, who had been a lone voice of caution amidst Sarah's blinding infatuation. Emma, horrified by Sarah's discoveries and the perilous situation she found herself in, immediately offered her unwavering support, promising to help in any way she could, a lifeline in a sea of despair. Sarah also started gathering irrefutable evidence, discreetly copying financial records from David's hidden files, taking photographs of his various fake IDs, and collecting any other incriminating documents she could find, each piece a silent scream for justice. She moved with a quiet desperation, her movements precise and calculated, her fear a constant, cold companion that spurred her onward. She knew that one wrong move, one slip of her carefully constructed facade, could have catastrophic consequences, potentially sealing her fate. However, David, with his predatory instincts honed by years of manipulation and deception, sensed a subtle shift in Sarah's demeanor, the almost imperceptible changes in her daily routine, the guardedness in her eyes that she struggled to conceal, the slight hesitation in her responses to his probing questions. He noticed them all, his keen perception a terrifying weapon. His charming facade began to crack, revealing chilling glimpses of the ruthless individual beneath, a predator lurking just beneath the surface. his questions became more pointed, laced with an unsettling undertone of suspicion, and his physical presence became more suffocating. A constant shadow, he started to monitor her phone calls, her computer usage, and even her movements within the apartment, creating an atmosphere of pervasive surveillance. The psychological pressure intensified, a suffocating blanket of control that threatened to crush her spirit, to break her will. Sarah realized, with a terrifying clarity that pierced through her fear, not leaving him would not be easy. He was not going to let her go without a fight. Then, the true horror of her situation became brutally clear, a revelation that solidified her resolve and amplified her terror. Sarah stumbled upon a hidden compartment in David's personal safe, a secret space that radiated an aura of malevolence. Inside, she found not only more fake IDs and damning financial documents, but also a chilling collection of personal effects, a distinctive silver locket, a small, intricately hand-carved wooden bird, and a faded photograph of a smiling woman. The woman in the photograph was strikingly beautiful, with a vibrant energy that radiated even from the aged image. A ghost from David's past. Sarah recognized the locket and the wooden bird from the online forum she had scoured, the same items mentioned in the desperate pleas of families searching for their loved ones. They belonged to Emily Hayes, David's previous girlfriend, who had mysteriously disappeared 2 years prior. Emily's case had been widely reported, initially dismissed as a runaway, then tragically concluded as a suspected suicide. But her family had always maintained foul play, their cries for justice echoing unheard. The chilling implication was undeniable, a truth that sent a wave of nausea through Sarah. Emily hadn't left town. She hadn't taken her own life. She had been murdered, and David, the man who had professed his love for Sarah, was responsible. The realization was a visceral shock, a cold wave of terror that washed over Sarah, leaving her trembling. She was not just dealing with a con artist. She was living with a murderer, a monster cloaked in charm. The man who had whispered sweet nothings in her ear, who had promised her forever, was capable of the ultimate betrayal, of taking a human life. A photograph of Emily, her bright smile frozen in time, served as a stark and horrifying warning. Sarah was not merely a victim of financial fraud. She was a target, the next in a chilling line of unsuspecting women. David had meticulously planned Emily's disappearance, executing it with cold precision, and he was now planning hers, the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place with a horrifying accuracy. The isolation, the financial control, the subtle erosion of her independence, it was all part of a calculated scheme to make her vanish without a trace, to erase her existence. The breaking point had arrived, and Sarah knew, with absolute certainty, that her life depended on her ability to escape the man she had once thought loved her, before it was too late. Sarah's desperate plea for help, relayed through a series of coded messages to Emma, finally reached the ears of Detective Lisa Rodriguez. Emma, armed with the fragmented but damning evidence, Sarah had managed to collect the copied financial records, the photographs of David's various IDs, the chilling details of Emily Hayes' disappearance, presented a compelling case to the seasoned investigator. Detective Rodriguez, known for her sharp intellect, unwavering dedication, and a reputation for pursuing justice relentlessly, immediately recognized the chilling patterns that echoed through Sarah's story. The multiple identities, the systematic financial irregularities, the sudden disappearances of associates and romantic partners, it all pointed to a sophisticated and dangerous predator, a ghost moving through society. The investigation, initially a quiet inquiry based on Emma's urgent appeal, quickly escalated into a full-scale manhunt, a race against time to save Sarah. While Detective Rodriguez and her team meticulously pieced together David's convoluted past, tracing his aliases and financial transactions across continents, Sarah, still trapped in the luxurious but suffocating penthouse, played a dangerous game of cat and mouse. She feigned ignorance, pretending that her unease had completely subsided, that her trust in David had been fully restored, and that their life together was once again perfect. Every interaction was a meticulously choreographed performance. Every smile, every casual conversation, a calculated risk. all designed to lull him into a false sense of security, to make him believe she was still under his spell. She knew that her life hung precariously in the balance, a fragile thread that could snap at any moment, and her only hope was to buy enough time for the authorities to close in, to tighten the net around him. The tension in the apartment was palpable. A silent battle of wills played out beneath a veneer of normalcy, each breath a silent prayer for rescue. The breakthrough came when Detective Rodriguez's team, through tireless effort and forensic analysis, uncovered a crucial piece of information. David Chen, or rather, the man posing as David Chen, was actually a highly sought-after international con artist and suspected serial killer named Julian Thorne. His real identity had been a ghost, meticulously erased from official records, his past a carefully constructed void, but a single, overlooked fingerprint on a forgotten document from a previous crime scene, a cold case from years ago, finally linked him to a string of unsolved cases across several continents. Julian Thorne was not just a con artist. He was a master manipulator, a chameleon who had perfected the art of assuming new lives, leaving behind a devastating trail of financial ruin, shattered lives, and vanished individuals, his victims mere pawns in his twisted game. His true face was finally revealed. The police moved swiftly and decisively. A carefully orchestrated raid on the penthouse apartment, executed with precision and overwhelming force, caught Julian Thorne completely by surprise, disrupting his carefully laid plans. Sarah, alerted by a prearranged signal from Emma, a subtle text message that confirmed her impending rescue, managed to slip away during the chaos, her heart pounding with a mixture of terror and overwhelming relief, the weight of months of fear finally lifting. The man who had held her captive, both emotionally and physically, who had threatened to erase her existence, was finally apprehended, his reign of terror brought to an abrupt end. The penthouse, once a symbol of her dreams and aspirations, was now a crime scene, a stark testament to the nightmare she had endured, a place forever tainted by his presence. The subsequent investigation unveiled the full, horrifying scope of Julian Thorne's crimes. He was indeed responsible for the disappearance and presumed murder of Emily Hayes, as well as several other women whose cases had gone cold for years, their families left with agonizing uncertainty. His motive was not simply financial gain, though that was a significant component of his schemes. He was a thrill-seeker, a narcissist, who reveled in the absolute power he wielded over his victims, the ultimate control he exerted over their lives and deaths. A twisted sense of satisfaction derived from their suffering. The financial fraud was merely a means to an end, a way to isolate his targets, to sever their ties to the outside world, and to make their eventual disappearance seem plausible, even self-inflicted. The shocking revelation, however, was that Julian Thorne was not operating alone. He was part of a larger, shadowy criminal network, a sophisticated syndicate specializing in identity theft, large-scale financial fraud, and the systematic elimination of those who threatened to expose their illicit operations. His connections run deep, reaching into the highest echelons of organized crime, making his capture a significant blow to their operations, a victory for justice. Sarah, though scarred by the harrowing ordeal, emerged as a survivor, her spirit unbroken, her resolve strengthened. Her courageous testimony was crucial in Julian Thorne's conviction, bringing a measure of justice and closure to his many victims and their grieving families. The documentary, She Thought He Loved Her, became a powerful cautionary tale, a stark reminder that sometimes the most dangerous predators were the most charming masks, their true intentions hidden beneath a veneer of false affection. The truth, once unveiled, was far more terrifying than any fiction, and the love Sarah had believed in was nothing more than a meticulously crafted illusion, designed to ensnare her in a web of lies and ultimately to erase her existence, a fate she narrowly escaped.